Hey everyone, we are diving into a topic today that I know is on a lot of people's minds, and that's cancer.
Yeah.
And, before you think, oh no, not another statistic. This isn't about doom and gloom.
Right.
This is about hope and a whole new way of looking at this disease that has touched so many lives.
Absolutely. And we're going to be exploring the work of Dr. Thomas Seyfried, who is a scientist who's basically turning the traditional understanding of cancer on its head.
Yeah, you had actually asked us to dig into cancer prevention, and let's be real for a second. The statistics, they're pretty alarming.
Yeah.
Cancer rates are still rising, even in young people.
hmm
It feels like with all the advancements in medicine, we're still kind of struggling to get ahead of this disease.
Yeah, and that's where Dr. Seyfried's research comes in because he's challenging that widely held belief that cancer is primarily a genetic disease.
Okay.
He argues that it's a metabolic disease at its core.
Metabolic, I have to admit, that always sounds a bit intimidating to me. Can you break
Yeah.
that down a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Think of it this way. Our cells are like these tiny factories that are constantly working and they need energy to function, right? And they get this energy by essentially burning fuel, much like a car engine does.
Okay.
In a healthy cell, this process is very efficient.
So far, so good. We've got these little efficient cell factories just humming along.
Exactly. But Dr. Seyfried's research suggests that cancer throws a wrench in the works.
Uh-oh.
He believes that cancer arises when the energy production system in our cells gets damaged.
Okay.
And when this damage occurs, the cells can no longer produce energy efficiently.
So then their energy factory starts to sputter a bit. What happens then?
Well, instead of just shutting down the cells, find a workaround. It's kind of like a backup generator.
Okay.
This backup system is much less efficient, but it does allow the damaged cells to survive.
Okay.
And here's the kicker. They can grow uncontrollably.
Um,
This, according to Seyfried, is the hallmark of cancer.
wow. So it's not just that our cells are growing out of control. It's that they're being forced to use this inefficient backup system. And that's what's actually driving the cancer process.
That's the crux of his argument.
Wow.
And it really is a radical shift from the way we've traditionally viewed cancer.
Okay, so I'm hooked. I'm interested in it. So if cancer cells are relying on this less efficient energy production method, what exactly are they using for fuel? This is where it gets really interesting, right? If cancer cells are like, sorry, we're closed for renovations, and they switch to that backup generator, what are they even using to keep the lights on?
Dr. Seyfried's research points to two main culprits: glucose, which is basically sugar, and glutamine, an amino acid. Think of them as the junk food that cancer cells crave when they're stuck using that less efficient energy pathway.
Ah, so our modern diets, packed with processed foods and sugary drinks, are essentially laying out the welcome mat for cancer cells. It's like we're inadvertently fueling the very thing we're trying to prevent.
That's the implication Seyfried highlights. He argues that by providing an abundance of these fuel sources, glucose and glutamine, we're creating an environment where cancer can thrive.
It's kind of unsettling when you think about it, this idea that we might be inadvertently contributing to our own cancer risk through the foods we choose.
It's a stark contrast to the way our ancestors ate for millennia. Dr. Seyfried points out that for the majority of human history, our ancestors lived in a metabolic state called nutritional ketosis.
Okay, ketosis, that's a word we hear a lot these days, usually in the context of trendy diets. But what does it actually mean in the context of our ancestors?
It means their bodies were primarily fueled by fat, not glucose. Imagine a car that can seamlessly switch from gasoline to electricity. Our ancestors' bodies were adapted to switch to burning fat for fuel when glucose from carbohydrates was scarce. And when your body burns fat this way, it produces molecules called ketones, hence the term ketosis.
So instead of running on sugar like we often do today, they were running on fat-burning ketones.
Precisely. And here's where the link to cancer gets fascinating. Dr. Seyfried believes that because our ancestors were frequently in this state of nutritional ketosis, where glucose was less abundant, cancer was likely much less common. Their cells weren't being supplied with the easy access fuel that cancer cells thrive on.
So it wasn't just about them moving more and hunting for their food. It was the food itself that created this different and potentially cancer-protective metabolic environment.
Exactly. And it raises a crucial question. Could our modern diets, overflowing with easily accessible glucose, be contributing to the rise in cancer rates we see today? Dr. Seyfried's research suggests it's a strong possibility.
Okay, so let's say we want to know where we stand on this whole glucose-ketone spectrum.
Mhm.
How do we even measure if our bodies are in a state that's starving cancer or unintentionally feeding it. It's like we need a metabolic checkup or something,
Yeah.
a way to see if we're accidentally giving cancer the fuel it needs.
Yeah, you're spot on. And that's where the glucose ketone index comes in, or GKI for short.
Yeah.
It's a tool that Dr. Seyfried and his team developed to actually measure the balance of glucose and ketones in your blood.
TKI.
Yeah.
Okay, so that sounds pretty technical.
Yeah.
Are we talking like blood tests at a fancy lab kind of thing?
It's actually simpler than you might think.
Okay.
You can calculate your GKI using a simple formula and a couple measurements, you know, your blood glucose level and your blood ketone level.
Okay.
And there are even online calculators that'll do it for you.
So no need for the lab coat and goggles then?
No, not at all.
That's good to know. But how do we make sense of this GKI number?
Sure.
What's considered a good GKI versus one that might be like, should we be concerned here?
Basically, a lower GKI indicates that you're in a more ketogenic state, you know, burning more fat for fuel.
Right.
Which is what we want. And Dr. Seyfried actually calls this the Paleolithic zone because it mimics that metabolic state of our ancestors.
I see.
Think of it this way. A high GKI means your cells are swimming in glucose, which, again, that's like a feast for cancer cells.
So a high GKI is like laying out the red carpet for cancer, and a low GKI is kind of like gone fishing sign.
Precisely.
Okay.
And, you know, the lower your GKI, the more you're tilting the odds in your favor.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's get practical for a second.
Yeah.
What are some things people listening can actually do if they want to get themselves into this Paleolithic zone, lower their GKI, and basically make their bodies less hospitable to cancer?
Well, Dr. Seyfried advocates for a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
And it's all about making, you know, gradual, sustainable changes to our lifestyle.
Sure.
So first and foremost, calorie restriction.
You know, when I hear calorie restriction, I immediately think crash diets and deprivation.
Right.
You're not suggesting we all go on like some crazy fasting regimen, right?
Not at all.
Okay, good.
It's not about starving yourself, but
Yeah.
rather, you know, being mindful of your calorie intake and focusing on nutrient-dense foods
Right.
that don't spike your blood sugar.
So it's like quality over quantity and choosing foods that keep our cells fueled without giving those pesky cancer cells a free pass to the buffet.
Exactly. You got it. And that brings us to another strategy, the ketogenic diet.
Right, keto.
This way of eating is naturally low in carbohydrates, high in healthy fats, which helps shift your body into that fat-burning state we've been talking about.
Right. Keto is definitely having a moment, but it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
Is that the only way to lower our GKI and get into that Paleolithic zone?
It's one effective way, but it's not the only way.
Okay.
The key is finding a sustainable eating pattern that works for you and helps you maintain a healthy GKI long-term.
Okay, so finding a way to eat that keeps our cells happy and healthy without feeling like we're on a restrictive diet forever.
Precisely, and while diet plays a big role,
Yeah.
we can't forget about two other powerful tools, exercise and intermittent fasting.
I was hoping you were going to say exercise.
Of course.
It's like the universal health booster.
Absolutely. Regular exercise, especially the kind that gets your heart rate up, helps your body use glucose more efficiently, and it keeps those mitochondria functioning optimally.
So hitting the gym or going for a run not only helps our waistlines, but it helps starve potential cancer cells.
That's the idea.
I like the sound of that.
And then there's intermittent fasting, which has also gained popularity recently.
Yes.
It involves cycling between periods of eating and fasting, which can further enhance your body's ability to burn fat for fuel.
So by giving our bodies a break from constantly digesting food, we're essentially flipping the switch to fat-burning mode,
Yeah,
even if we're not following a strict ketogenic diet.
exactly. It's like giving your cells a chance to clean house and reset their energy production systems.
This is all so fascinating, and it really puts the power back in our hands.
Yeah.
It's not about relying on some miracle cure. It's about making conscious choices to optimize our metabolic health.
I think that's a crucial point. Dr. Seyfried's work reminds us that we have more agency over our health than we might realize. It's about understanding how our bodies work at that cellular level and making choices that support that intricate system.
And speaking of taking control earlier, we mentioned the story of Pablo Kelly.
Yeah.
That's a powerful example of someone who took his health into his own hands after, a devastating cancer diagnosis.
It is a remarkable story.
He
He was diagnosed with glioblastoma,
right?
an aggressive form of brain cancer, and given just months to live.
Wow.
But he refused to accept that fate.
Wow.
He completely transformed his diet and lifestyle, embracing many of these principles we've discussed today, and he defied the odds.
He lived for another 10 years.
I know, it's amazing.
It's incredible, and it's a story that underscores the power of our choices and the potential for the human body to heal when given the right support.
Absolutely. Of course, it's essential to remember that everyone's journey is unique.
Of course.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach to cancer.
Right.
But Pablo's story, along with Dr. Seyfried's research, gives us a lot to think about, and perhaps even more importantly, empowers us to take a more proactive role in our health.
This deep dive has definitely given me a lot to chew on.
Good. I'm glad.
And if you're as intrigued by Dr. Seyfried's work as we are, be sure to check out the resources in our show notes. And until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and remember, you have the power to make a difference in your own health journey.
Tech lovers, I hope you found today's recap informative and engaging. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with your fellow tech enthusiasts. For more in-depth breakdowns of the latest tech trends, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. And remember, we're always open to your suggestions. Drop a comment below with your ideas for future videos. Until next time, stay curious and stay connected. See you in the next one.